A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Blood and Betrayal. The scent of wolfsbane and iron filled Freya's lungs as she stumbled through the forest, her bare feet tearing on thorns and roots she could barely see in the darkness. Behind her, the sounds of the harvest festival faded louder. Music, the warm glow of torchlight that had made her feel, for one dangerous moment, like she belonged somewhere. She had been a fool to hope. Freya Ashling was 22 years old, and she had learned long ago that hope was a luxury she could not afford. The daughter of a humble village healer, she had grown up on the fringes of shifter society, always aware that something fundamental was wrong with her. While other children received their wolves at puberty, shifting for the first time under proud parental gazes, Freya had waited, and felt nothing but the hollow absence where her wolf should have been. The village elders whispered that she was broken, cursed, a disgrace to her bloodline. Her mother would smile sadly and say nothing, but Freya had seen the shame in her eyes, the way she flinched when neighbors asked about her daughter's condition. Her father had died when she was young, leaving behind only vague mentions that their family was different, that Freya should not lose hope. But hope had died tonight, crushed under the weight of public humiliation. The Harvest Festival was the grandest celebration in their small village, a time when even outcasts like Freya were expected to attend. It was tradition for unmated females to be presented to visiting alphas and their sons, a chance for alliances to be formed and bloodlines to be strengthened. Freya had not wanted to participate. She knew what she was, what she lacked, but her mother had insisted, her hands trembling as she braided wildflowers into Freya's long ash-brown hair. "Please, sweetheart," her mother had whispered, "just this once. Perhaps there is someone who can see past the fact that defective." Freya had finished bitterly. Her mother had only looked away. So Freya had gone, dressed in her simplest gown, a pale blue that matched her eyes, and stood with the other unmated females as the visiting dignitaries arrived. Most were minor nobles, sons of betas and gammas, looking to strengthen their packs through strategic marriages. Freya had not expected anyone to look twice at her. And then he had arrived. Alpha Aldrich Thornheart. Even now, running through the darkness with tears streaming down her face, Freya could not forget her first glimpse of him. Tall and powerfully built, moving with the fluid grace of a predator, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, a face that could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and uncompromising strength, and his eyes golden, ancient, burning with intelligence that made her feel naked and exposed. He was not supposed to be there. The Alpha King rarely attended village festivals, but word had spread that he was traveling through their territory, inspecting borders, ensuring his vast domain remained secure. The village elders had been beside themselves with excitement at the prospect of hosting him, even briefly. Freya had stood in the back of the group of females, trying to be invisible. She had watched him survey the gathered crowd with those penetrating golden eyes, barely pausing on any of the preening daughters of local families. And then his gaze had found her. Everything had seemed to stop. The music, the laughter, even the wind in the trees. For one breathless moment, Aldrich had stared at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle and her heart race. She had felt something, a pull, a recognition, as if her very soul was reaching toward him despite the absence of her wolf. Then he had turned away, his expression carefully blank, and Freya had felt the moment shatter like glass. Yet something about his gaze lingered in her mind, a flicker of recognition he himself seemed desperate to deny. Later, as the festival continued, she had overheard the village elders speaking in hushed, excited tones. "Did you see?" The Alpha King looked at the Ashling girl. Impossible. Why would he notice someone like her? Perhaps there is more to her bloodline than we knew. The speculation had been unbearable. Freya had fled to the edge of the clearing, seeking the shadows where she always felt most comfortable. She had not expected anyone to follow her. But he had. Freya Ashling. His voice had been deep, resonant, carrying the weight of command that made every instinct in her body snap to attention despite her lack of a wolf. She had turned to find Aldrich standing mere feet away, his massive frame somehow even more intimidating in the flickering torchlight. "Alpha King," she had whispered, bowing her head as protocol demanded. "I did not mean to draw your attention. Please, return to the festival. There are many females far more worthy than look at me." It had not been a request. Freya had raised her eyes to meet his, and the impact had stolen her breath. Up close, she could see that his golden eyes were not uniform, but flecked with amber and bronze, like molten metal cooling into patterns. His scent surrounded herpine and wood smoke, and something wild that made her lightheaded. "Do you know what you are?" he had asked quietly. Freya had swallowed hard. "I am nothing, Alpha. I have no wolf. I am barely more than human. I should not have been presented tonight. I apologize for wasting you are not nothing." The words had been spoken with such conviction that Freya had almost believed them. Aldrich had stepped closer, and she had caught herself leaning toward him, drawn by forces she did not understand. "There is something." His hand had lifted, as if he might touch her face. Then he had frozen, his expression shuddering. "No, this cannot be. Alpha King, you need to leave, now." The change in him had been startling. One moment, warmth and wonder. The next, cold rejection. Freya had felt her chest constrict with familiar pain. "Of course," she had whispered. "Forgive me for presuming. Listen to me very carefully." His voice had dropped to a tone that vibrated through her bones. "You are to go home. You are not to speak of this encounter to anyone, and you are to stay far away from me. Do you understand?" Freya had nodded numbly, humiliation burning through her veins. I understand, Alpha King. You find me as unacceptable as everyone else does. I will not trouble you again." She had turned to flee, but his hand had shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising gentleness. His skin against hers had sent sparks racing up her arm. "That is not—" Aldrich had closed his eyes, his jaw clenching. "You do not understand. You cannot understand, but trust me when I say that distance between us is necessary. For both our sakes." Then he had released her and walked away, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. Freya had stood there, shaking, as the village elders emerged from the shadows where they had been eavesdropping. "What did he say to you?" Elder Mathen had demanded. What transpired? Freya had seen the speculation in their eyes, the sudden calculation. They thought the Alpha King might claim her, that their worthless, wolfless girl might somehow bring prestige to their small village. Nothing happened, Freya had said firmly. The Alpha King was merely ensuring I understood my place. But the damage had been done. Word spread through the festival like wildfire. The broken Ashling girl had been singled out by the Alpha King himself. Speculation ran rampant. By the time Freya had made her way back to the main clearing, trying to slip away unnoticed, she found herself the center of unwanted attention. And then the visiting nobles had noticed. "Look," one had laughed, his breath reeking of mead. "The wolfless wonder has caught our king's eye. How fascinating. Perhaps she has other skills." Another had suggested with a leer that made Freya's skin crawl. Skills that do not require shifting. The taunts had escalated. Someone had suggested that Freya demonstrate these supposed skills. Others had laughed, emboldened by drink and the mob mentality that infected even civilized gatherings when cruelty found a target. Freya had tried to leave, but they had surrounded her, their voices growing louder, their suggestions more vulgar. She had felt panic rising in her throat, choking her. Enough. Aldrich's voice had cut through the chaos like a blade. He had appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression thunderous. Every shifter present had immediately fallen silent, their gazes dropping in submission. "This female is under my protection," the Alpha King had declared. "Anyone who touches her, speaks to her, or approaches her without my explicit permission will answer to me personally. Is that understood?" The crowd had scattered like leaves in a storm, but the damage had been done. Freya had seen the looks on the faces around her, confusion, jealousy, rage that she had somehow earned protection she did not deserve. And Aldrich had looked at her with something that might have been regret or anger, or both. "Go home," he had said quietly, "and do not return to any gathering where I am present. My protection extends only so far, and your presence complicates things I cannot afford to have complicated." Then he had turned and walked away, leaving Freya standing alone in the center of the festival grounds. More isolated than she had ever been. So she had run. Now, hours later, Freya collapsed beside a fallen log deep in the forest, her lungs burning and her feet bleeding. The adrenaline that had carried her this far was fading, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion and the familiar ache of rejection. What was wrong with her? Why did the Alpha King look at her with such intensity only to push her away? Why did she feel this inexplicable pull toward a man who had made it abundantly clear he wanted nothing to do with her? A branch snapped somewhere in the darkness. Freya jerked upright, her weak shifter senses straining to identify the sound. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had run far from the village, deep into territory she did not know. Anything could be out here in the darkness. Another sound. Closer this time. Deliberate. Freya tried to rise, but her legs would not support her weight. She had pushed her merely human body too far, and now she was helpless in the wild forest at night. Every childhood tale of rogues and monsters seemed to echo in her mind. Then she saw them, eyes in the darkness, multiple pairs, glowing with predatory intent. The stench of unwashed fur and malice hit her senses, and Freya understood with terrible clarity that she was not alone. Rogues. Well, a voice rasped from the shadows. What do we have here? A little lost lamb, all alone in our forest. 3 figures emerged from the tree shifters, but wrong somehow. Their forms were more beast than human, their eyes reflecting no intelligence, only hunger and madness. Rogues were shifters who had lost themselves to their wolves, becoming feral predators that haunted the spaces between territories. Freya tried to scramble backward, but her body refused to cooperate. The largest rogue stepped closer, saliva dripping from elongated fangs. You smell strange, it growled. Almost like Pack, but not. What are you, little thing? Please, Freya whispered, hating the weakness in her voice. I have nothing of value. Just let me go. The rogues laughed, the sound grating and inhuman. You are the value, little morsel. The Alpha King declared you under his protection, yes? We heard the whispers from the village. You must be very precious indeed. Freya felt ice slide down her spine. They had been watching the festival. They knew she had been singled out, and they thought she was valuable enough to risk angering Aldrich Thornheart. Nothing, she said desperately. Worthless. He only spoke to me out of pity. Please. The largest rogue lunged. Freya screamed, throwing up her arms in a futile attempt at defense. She braced for the impact, for the pain, for the end. It never came. Instead, a massive white shape erupted from the trees, slamming into the rogue with devastating force. Freya caught a glimpse of fur the color of moonlight, of fangs longer than her fingers, of golden eyes blazing with unholy fury. The white wolf was enormous, easily twice the size of the rogue's. It moved with lethal precision, its jaws closing around the throat of the lead attacker. There was a sickening crack, and the rogue fell limp. The other 2 rogues tried to flee, but the white wolf was faster. It took them down with brutal efficiency, its movements almost too quick to follow. Within seconds, all 3 rogues lay dead or dying, their blood staining the forest floor. Then, the white wolf turned its attention to Freya. She should have been terrified. This creature had just killed 3 full-grown shifters with ease. But as those golden eyes met hers, Freya felt safe, protected, as if this magnificent beast would die before allowing harm to come to her. The wolf approached slowly, its massive head lowering to her level. Freya found herself reaching out instinctively, her fingers sinking into impossibly soft fur. The wolf made a low rumbling sound that was neither growl nor purr, pressing its cold nose against her neck. Where her torn feet rested against the ground, Freya felt warmth spreading. She looked down in amazement to see a faint silver glow emanating from her skin, and as she watched, her wounds began to close. The pain faded. The bleeding stopped. What? She breathed. The wolf stepped back, and between one heartbeat and the next, its form began to shift. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded into skin. The massive beast reshaped itself into the form of a man Freya recognized. Aldrich Thornheart stood before her, naked in the moonlight, his powerful frame marked with old scars and new blood from the rogues. His golden eyes were wild, not quite human, as he stared at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You should not be here," he growled, his voice rougher than before. "You should have gone home. You should have stayed away from me." "I ran," Freya whispered. "I did what you told me. I tried to stay away. Not far enough." Aldrich moved closer, and Freya could see he was trembling with suppressed emotion. "Nothing is far enough. Do you understand what you did to me tonight? What you continue to do to me? I don't understand any of this," Freya admitted, her voice breaking. "You looked at me like I mattered. And then you pushed me away. You protected me, then told me to avoid you. Now you've saved my life. What am I supposed to think?" Aldrich closed his eyes, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "You are supposed to think that I am a dangerous creature who should never have noticed you. You are supposed to run from me and never look back. Why?" The question burst from Freya before she could stop it. "What is it about me that makes you react this way? What am I that frightens the great Alpha King?" Aldrich's eyes snapped open, and in them Freya saw a war being waged between desire and duty, between instinct and iron control. "You are my mate," he said finally, the words seeming to be torn from his very soul. "My destined mate. The other half of my soul, and claiming you will likely kill us both." The confession hung in the air between them, more shocking than anything Freya could have imagined. Before she could respond, before she could process what he had just revealed, exhaustion claimed her. The adrenaline, the healing, the overwhelming emotions of the night, it was too much. Her vision darkened, and the last thing she felt was Aldrich's strong arms catching her as she fell, his voice rough with anguish as he whispered her name into the darkness. Chapter 2. Temporary Chains. Freya woke to the scent of pine and ancient stone, her body cocooned in softness she had never experienced. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, her mind struggling to piece together fragments of memory. The festival, the forest, rogues with feral eyes, and golden eyes that burned with impossible intensity. "You are my mate," the words echoed in her consciousness, and Freya's eyes snapped open. Above her stretched a canopy of deep burgundy fabric, held aloft by intricately carved wooden posts. She was lying in a bed that could have fit her entire cottage inside it, covered with furs and linens so fine they felt like water against her skin. This was not home. This was nowhere near home. Freya sat up carefully, her hands instinctively going to her neck. Her fingers found raised skin, tender to the touch. A bite mark. She scrambled to the edge of the massive bed, searching for anything reflective. A polished silver tray sat on a nearby table, and she grabbed it with trembling hands. The mark was unmistakable. 2 curved indentations, perfectly placed where neck met shoulder, the skin around them faintly bruised but already healing. The traditional marking spot, the place where shifters claimed their mates. No. No, no, no. The door opened, and a man entered. Not Aldrich. This man was shorter, leaner, with sandy hair and sharp hazel eyes that assessed her with military precision. He wore leather armor marked with the royal insignia, and he moved with the controlled grace of a trained warrior. "Lady Freya," he said formally, bowing slightly, "I am Gareth, Beta to King Aldrich. I am relieved to see you awake. You have been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days? Freya's voice came out hoarse, unfamiliar. Where am I? What happened? You are in the royal encampment 20 miles north of your village. As for what happened, Gareth paused, choosing his words carefully. You were attacked by rogues. The king saved your life. In doing so, he was forced to perform an emergency marking to stabilize your condition. The rogue who struck you used a blade coated in silver vein, poison deadly to shifters, and those with even dormant shifter blood. Emergency marking? Freya touched the bite again, her heart racing. What does that mean? It means the marking is temporary. Gareth's expression remained neutral, but Freya caught a flicker of something in his eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or concern. Under normal circumstances, A claiming bite creates a permanent mate bond. But an emergency marking, done purely to save a life, creates only a temporary connection. It will dissolve naturally at the next full moon, which is 28 days from now. 28 days. 4 weeks. The information should have been reassuring, but Freya felt only a strange hollowness in her chest. So, am not permanently bonded to him? No. The bond will fade, and you will be free to return to your life. However, there are complications. Of course there were. Freya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she was wearing a sleeping gown that was definitely not hers. Gareth, reading her expression, gestured to a screen in the corner. Fresh clothing has been provided. Once you are dressed, the king wishes to speak with you. There are things you must understand about your situation. And if I refuse to see him? Gareth's mouth tightened. Lady Freya, I understand this is overwhelming, but you do not have the luxury of refusal. The rogues who attacked you were not random hunters. They targeted you specifically because they witnessed the king's attention at the festival. Word of your existence has spread. Until the marking fades and you are no longer connected to the king, you are a target for every enemy he has ever made. The words hit Freya like physical blows. She had gone from invisible outcast to walking target in a single night. All because Aldrich Thornheart had looked at her with recognition she did not understand and claimed her to save her life. Get dressed, Gareth said more gently. The king is not a patient man, but he is a fair one. Hear what he has to say before you make judgments. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Freya sat on the edge of the enormous bed, her mind churning. Part of her wanted to rage at the injustice of it all, her life upended, her body marked without her consent, even if the reasons had been noble. But another part of her, a part she was afraid to examine too closely, remembered the way Aldrich had looked at her in the forest. You are my mate. Not just a mate. His mate. The Alpha King had a destined partner, and somehow, impossibly, it was the wolfless girl everyone had dismissed as broken. Freya forced herself to stand and walk behind the screen. The clothing provided was simple, but finely made, supple leather breeches, a linen tunic, and a wool cloak lined with fur. Practical traveling clothes, not the elaborate gowns she had expected. She dressed quickly, braiding her ash-brown hair to keep it out of her face. When she emerged from behind the screen, Gareth was waiting outside the tent. He led her through the royal encampment, which was far larger than Freya had imagined. Dozens of tents surrounded a central pavilion, with soldiers moving purposefully between them. Everyone who saw Gareth immediately bowed, their eyes sliding to Freya with barely concealed curiosity. She felt exposed, vulnerable, every instinct screaming at her to hide. But she kept her chin up and followed Gareth to the largest tent, the king's pavilion. Inside, Aldrich stood before a massive table covered in maps and documents. He was dressed in dark leather and mail, his hair still damp as if he had recently bathed. When Freya entered, he looked up, and their eyes met. The impact stole her breath. Even across the tent, she felt something a pull, a warmth that had not been there before. The bond. It was real, tangible, a living thing that connected them. Leave us, Aldrich commanded, his gaze never leaving Freya. Gareth bowed and withdrew. The tent flap fell closed, leaving them alone. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words and impossible truths. How do you feel? Aldrich asked finally, his voice carefully controlled. Confused, angry, terrified. Freya forced herself to stand straight. Take your pick. A muscle in Aldrich's jaw tightened. You have every right to those feelings. What I did was unconscionable, even if it was necessary to save your life. Why? The question burst from Freya before she could stop it. You said I was your mate. If that is true, why do you look at me like claiming me as a catastrophe? Aldrich turned away, his hands bracing on the table. Because it is a catastrophe. For both of us. Explain it to me then. Help me understand why being mated to you is apparently a death sentence. He was silent for a long moment, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke, his voice was low, rough with suppressed emotion. You have no wolf, Freya. You know this. But what you do not know is why. Freya waited, her heart pounding. This was the answer she had sought her entire life. The explanation for what made her different. Broken. There are old bloodlines among our kind. Aldrich continued. Ancient lineages that were thought extinct. One such lineage was called Silverblood. They were omegas with extraordinary gifts healing, amplification of others' powers, abilities that bordered on the mystical, but they had one unique characteristic. They never experienced heat cycles naturally. Their bodies waited for their true mates, and only after the mate bond began would their wolves awaken. Freya's breath caught. You think one of these Silverbloods? I do not think. I know. Aldrich finally turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw certainty, and something that looked like grief. When I saw you at the festival, I recognized what you were immediately. Your scent, your presence, everything about you called to my wolf in ways I have never experienced. And when I bit you in the forest, when your blood touched my tongue, I tasted the truth of it. You are Silverblood, Freya. Perhaps the last of your kind. The revelation should have been shocking, but somehow it felt right, like a missing piece sliding into place. It explained so much. Her mother's cryptic comments, her father's dying words about being different, the way she had always felt like she was waiting for something she could not name. But if this is what I am, why is that a catastrophe? Freya moved closer, driven by a need to understand. If we're mates, if this is destiny. Aldrich laughed bitterly. Destiny. What a pretty word for a curse. Do you know what happened to the last Silverblood who mated with an alpha of royal blood? She went mad from the intensity of the bond. Her powers consumed her. She died screaming, and her mate followed her into death within days, because he could not survive without her. Freya felt ice slide down her spine. How do you know this? Because it was my great-great-grandfather and his mate. The story is recorded in our histories as a cautionary tale, a warning against allowing Silverbloods and royal alphas to bond. The connection is too powerful, too intense. It destroys them both. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Freya understood now why Aldrich had tried to push her away at the festival, why he looked at her with such conflicted emotions. He was trying to protect them both from a fate written in blood and tragedy. But he marked me anyway, Freya said quietly. Even knowing this, you chose to save my life. Aldrich's hands clenched into fists. What choice did I have? Watch my mate die before my eyes? Allow the poison to take you when I had the power to stop it? His voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. I am damned if I claim you and damned if I do not. So I chose the path that gave us both more time. Time for what? Time for the temporary marking to fade. Time for you to be free of this. Of me. Aldrich moved to a chest in the corner, pulling out a leather satchel. I am sending you to my castle under heavy guard. You will remain there, protected, until the next full moon. Then the marking will dissolve. The bond will break, and you can return to your village. You will be free. And what if I do not want to be free? The words escaped before Freya could stop them, before she could think about what she was saying. Aldrich's head snapped up, his golden eyes blazing. Do not say that. Do not even think it. Why not? Freya stepped closer, driven by something she could not name. You are my mate, Aldrich. I may not understand what that means yet, but I feel it. This connection between us. Do you truly believe ignoring it will make it go away? I believe that indulging it will kill us both. Aldrich's voice was raw. I have already lost one mate, Freya. Lady Seraphine died 5 years ago under circumstances I still do not fully understand. I will not watch another woman die because of me. But you never loved her, did you? Freya said softly, somehow knowing the truth. She was political. Duty. Not your true mate. No. Aldrich closed his eyes. Seraphine deserved better than a husband who could give her respect but not his heart. And you deserve better than a mate who will only bring you pain and death. So we will wait out these 28 days. I will keep you safe for now. And when the moon rises full, you will go home and forget I ever existed. Or so I must keep telling myself. What if I cannot forget? What if this bond is already too strong to simply dissolve? Then we will both suffer. Aldrich picked up the satchel, his expression closing off. But we will suffer alive and apart, rather than dead and together. That is my choice, and it is final. He called for Gareth, who entered with timing that suggested he had been waiting just outside. Take Lady Freya to the castle, Aldrich commanded. Provide her with quarters, protection, and anything she requires. But she is to remain within the walls until the full moon. No exceptions. My King Gareth began, but Aldrich silenced him with a look. That is an order, Beta. See that it is carried out. Gareth bowed stiffly. As you command. Freya felt something fracture inside her. She had spent her entire life being pushed away, being told she was not enough, and now, when she had finally found someone who saw her, who recognized her, he was pushing her away too. But this time, it was not because she was broken. It was because the connection was too perfect, too powerful, too dangerous. Aldrich, she whispered. He did not look at her. Go, Freya. And do not make this harder than it already is. Gareth touched her elbow gently, guiding her toward the exit. Freya let herself be led away, her mind churning with everything she had learned. She was Silverblood. She was mated to the Alpha King. And apparently, loving him would kill them both. As they left the pavilion, Freya glanced back one final time. Aldrich stood alone in the center of his tent, his shoulders bowed as if carrying an unbearable weight. Even from a distance, she could feel his anguish through the temporary bond, a mirror of her own. 28 days until the full moon. 28 days until this fragile connection dissolved, and she returned to being nobody, to decide if some things were worth dying for. Chapter 3. Silver Threads. The royal castle rose from the mountainside like a crown of stone, its towers piercing the gray sky. Freya had spent 5 days traveling here under Gareth's watchful eye, and with each mile, the temporary bond had stretched between her and Aldrich like a thread pulled taut. She could feel him even now, distant but present, a constant awareness humming beneath her skin. 3 weeks remained until the full moon, 21 days until the bond dissolved, and she became nobody again. 2 weeks slipped by like water through her fingers. The moon's pull grew stronger, the bond shifting from sharp pain to quiet ache. The castle interior was overwhelming. Corridors stretched endlessly, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on tapestries depicting battles and bloodlines. Servants bowed as Freya passed, their expressions carefully neutral. But she caught the whispers that followed in her wake. The wolfless girl, the one the king marked. What could he possibly see in her? Gareth led her to a suite of rooms that were larger than her entire cottage. Rich burgundy curtains framed windows overlooking mountains that disappeared into clouds. A fire crackled in a hearth carved from obsidian. Everything spoke of wealth and power beyond Freya's comprehension. These will be your quarters, Gareth said formally. Meals will be brought to you. If you require anything, inform the attendants. You are free to move about the castle grounds, but you must remain within the walls. Am I a guest or a prisoner? Freya asked quietly. Gareth's expression softened fractionally. You are under the king's protection. Those who wish you harm are numerous and patient. The walls are for your safety. After he left, Freya explored her new prison. The rooms were beautiful but empty, devoid of the life and warmth she had known in her small village. She found herself standing at the window, one hand pressed to the bite mark on her neck, feeling Aldrich's presence somewhere far away. He had not come to the castle. According to Gareth, the king was touring the border territories, deliberately putting distance between them. It should have been a relief. Instead, Freya felt the absence like a physical ache. The days began to blur together. Freya woke at dawn, dressed in clothing that had been provided for her, and wandered the castle like a ghost. The servants were polite but distant. The guards nodded respectfully but never spoke. She was utterly, completely alone. On the 8th day, Gareth found her in the library, surrounded by ancient texts she could barely read. She had been searching for information about Silverbloods, desperate to understand what she was. The beta studied her for a moment, then sat across from her with surprising informality. You need occupation, he said bluntly. Training. Purpose. Sitting in these rooms waiting for the moon to turn will drive you mad. What would you have me do? Practice being invisible again? Freya's voice was sharper than she intended. I would have you learn to defend yourself. Learn the politics of the kingdom you have inadvertently become connected to. Gareth leaned forward, his hazel eyes intent. You may believe you will return to your village and resume your old life. But Lady Freya, that is an illusion. Even after the bond breaks, people will remember that you were marked by the Alpha King. That changes everything. The words struck deep because they were true. Freya could never go back to being the invisible broken girl. The world had seen her, and it would not forget. Over the following days, Gareth became an unexpected presence in her life. He taught her to hold a dagger properly, to recognize threats, to move through the castle with awareness rather than fear. He explained the intricate web of alliances that held the kingdom together, the noble families whose loyalty was bought with marriages and land grants, the constant threat of those who believed they had a better claim to the throne. It was during one of these lessons that Gareth revealed a truth that made Freya's breath catch. Lady Seraphine was not the king's true mate, he said carefully. She was from House Fairwind, a powerful family whose support was crucial to the king's consolidation of power 5 years ago. Their marriage was political, respectful, but cold. What happened to her? She died suddenly. Illness, the healers said. But the king never quite believed it. He always suspected there was more to her death than he was told. Gareth's expression darkened. It changed him, made him harder, more isolated. Freya absorbed this, understanding Aldrich better now. He had lost one mate to mysterious circumstances, and found another in a girl who could literally kill him with the intensity of their bond. No wonder he kept his distance. On the 14th day, as Freya practiced defensive stances in the courtyard under Gareth's instruction, an elderly woman approached. She was small and wizened, her silver hair braided in complex patterns, her eyes sharp and knowing. Lady Freya, the woman said, her voice carrying surprising strength. I am Malus, keeper of histories and advisor to the throne. We need to speak. Gareth immediately bowed, gesturing for Freya to do the same. Malus waved off the formality impatiently. Come with me, child. There are things you must know before it is too late. She led Freya to a tower room filled with scrolls and books that smelled of age and secrets. Malus settled into a chair with a sigh and studied Freya with unsettling intensity. Tell me what you know of your heritage, she commanded. Only what the king told me. That I am Silverblood, that my kind was thought extinct. Freya hesitated. That bonding with him could kill us both. Malus nodded slowly. The king knows the broad strokes, but not the details. I have spent decades studying the old bloodlines. When word reached me of your existence, I knew I had to examine you myself. She gestured for Freya to approach. May I? Freya offered her arm, and Malus pressed withered fingers to her wrist. The old woman's eyes unfocused, and Freya felt something strange, as if Malus was reading her the way one might read a book. After a long moment, Malus released her and leaned back with satisfaction. You are indeed Silverblood, and of a particularly pure line. The abilities are there, sleeping, waiting to be awakened. The marking has already begun the process. Your powers are stirring. What powers? Freya asked, thinking of the strange silver glow that had healed her feet in the forest. Healing, primarily. Amplification of others' abilities. In times of great stress, you may manifest defensive capabilities. Barriers of pure energy. Malus fixed her with a penetrating stare. But all of this requires the mate bond to activate fully. Your wolf is tied to your mate's wolf. You cannot shift without him. So I will always be incomplete, Freya said bitterly. Even after learning what I am still broken. You are not broken, child. You are waiting. Malus stood, moving to a shelf and pulling down a leather-bound tome. This is the true history of the Silverbloods. Not the cautionary tales told to frighten royals away from powerful omegas, but the reality. She opened the book to a page marked with faded ribbon. Yes, there was a royal alpha who bonded with a Silverblood, and yes, it was intense. But she did not go mad from the bond itself. She was poisoned by those who feared what she represented, what power she could give her mate. The intensity of their bond meant he followed her into death, rather than live without her. That is the truth that was twisted into warning. Freya felt the ground shift beneath her understanding. You are saying, the danger is not the bond itself. The danger is those who fear what a bonded royal alpha and silver blood omega could become together. Malus closed the book carefully. Such a pair would be nearly unstoppable. Their power would be absolute. And absolute power always breeds enemies desperate enough to destroy it. Before Freya could respond, a commotion erupted in the courtyard below. She rushed to the window and saw soldiers scrambling, horses being readied. Through the bond, she felt a sudden spike of alarm that was not her own. Aldrich. He was in danger. Gareth burst into the room moments later, his face grim. Lady Freya, you must come with me now. The king's party has been ambushed on the northern road. They are fighting their way back, but he did not need to finish. Freya was already moving, her heart pounding. The bond pulled at her, urgent and demanding. Aldrich needed her, and every instinct she possessed was screaming at her to go to him. They reached the main gate just as Aldrich's contingent thundered through. Horses foaming, soldiers bloodied, and in the center of it all, Aldrich himself. His armor was dented, his face streaked with blood, and his golden eyes were blazing with barely controlled fury. The moment he saw Freya, something in his expression shifted. Relief, anger, fear, all tangled together in a way that made her breath catch. Inside, he commanded, his voice rough. Now, in the great hall, with Gareth and several other high-ranking soldiers present, Aldrich paced like a caged wolf while healers attended to his wounds. He waved them away impatiently, his attention fixed on Freya. This was no random attack, he said finally. They knew our route, they knew our numbers, and they were specifically targeting me. Lord Corvin's men, Gareth suggested quietly. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Likely. He has been consolidating power in the Western territories. This was a test, a probe to see how vulnerable I am. His eyes found Freya again, and she felt the weight of that golden gaze like a physical touch. They were asking about you, he said quietly. The assassins. Before I killed them. They mentioned the wolfless Omega. They wanted to know where you were. Terror slid down Freya's spine. They were coming for her, using her as leverage against Aldrich. Gareth had been right. She would never be safe again. Bond or no bond. Aldrich moved suddenly, crossing the distance between them in 2 strides. He stopped mere inches away, close enough that Freya could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the copper tang of blood and the wild scent that was uniquely his. I need to know you are safe, he said roughly. I cannot do what needs to be done if I am constantly terrified that someone will reach you. I am safe here. You made sure of that. Freya forced the words out despite her racing heart. It is not enough. Aldrich's hand lifted, trembling, as if he wanted to touch her but could not quite allow himself. I feel you through this bond, Freya. Every moment of fear, every spike of anxiety. It is driving me to madness. 2 weeks, Freya whispered. Just 2 more weeks until the full moon. Then you will not have to feel me anymore. Aldrich closed his eyes, and the anguish that rolled through the bond nearly drove Freya to her knees. I do not want to stop feeling you, he admitted, his voice barely more than a whisper. That is what terrifies me most. I should be counting the days until you are free. But instead I am dreading the moment when this connection breaks, and you disappear from my senses forever. Freya reached up before she could stop herself, her palm cupping his bearded jaw. Aldrich's eyes opened, blazing with heat and need, and barely restrained hunger. Gareth approached quietly, his expression sympathetic. He is afraid, the beta said softly. More afraid than I have ever seen him. Because for the first time in his life, he has something he truly cannot bear to lose. Freya wiped her eyes angrily. He is a fool, perhaps. But he is a fool trying to keep you alive. Gareth paused. The question is, Lady Freya, what are you willing to risk to change his mind? Freya looked toward the door Aldrich had disappeared through, feeling the pull of the bond even now. She was falling in love with an alpha king, who was determined to save her by breaking both their hearts. 2 weeks remained. 2 weeks to convince him that some things were worth dying for, that love, true love, was worth any risk. Chapter 4. Unraveling. 3 days remained until the full moon. Freya could feel the bond weakening, growing thin like cloth worn too long. What had once been a constant presence was now intermittent, flickering like a candle flame in wind. Soon, it would extinguish completely. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt like she was dying by inches. Aldrich had returned to the castle 2 days ago, but he avoided her with military precision. Freya caught glimpses of him in corridors, heard his voice through closed doors, felt the ghost of his presence through the fading bond. But he never came to her, never sought her out. He was waiting for the moon to rise and set them both free. Freya stood in her chambers staring at her reflection. She had changed during these weeks. Her face was thinner, sharper. Her eyes held shadows they had not before. The bite mark on her neck was fading, the skin there now only slightly darker than the rest. By tomorrow night, even that would be gone. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. She expected a servant, but it was Gareth who entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Lady Freya," he said formally, "your sister has arrived. She is asking to see you." Isolde. Freya's heart leaped. Her younger sister, 18 and full of life, the only family she had left. "What is she doing here?" "She traveled from your village with a message from your mother." Gareth hesitated. "She is distressed. Perhaps you should speak with her." Freya found Isolde in a receiving room, pacing like a caged animal. When she saw Freya, she burst into tears and ran to embrace her. "They are saying terrible things about you." Isolde sobbed against Freya's shoulder. "The village elders, the families, they say you seduced the Alpha King, that you used dark magic to trap him. They are afraid of what it means that you were marked." "Let them talk," Freya said quietly, though the words cut deep. "It will be over soon. The bond breaks tomorrow night." Isolde pulled back, studying her sister's face. "Do you want it to break?" The question was simple, but it shattered something inside Freya. "No," she whispered. "No, I do not want it to break. But what I want does not matter." "Why not?" Isolde demanded. "You are his mate, Freya. True mate. Mother always said there was something special about our bloodline, something powerful. If the Alpha King recognized it, why would you walk away?" "Because staying will kill us both." The words fell between them like stones. Isolde's eyes widened, and Freya found herself explaining everything. The Silverblood legacy, the warnings about royal bonds, the history of mates destroyed by their own connection. By the time she finished, Isolde was pale but determined. "You don't understand," Freya said. "I've learned what I am, what we are. Malus told me. Our blood is rare, powerful and dangerous to those who fear it." The words hit harder than Freya expected. Was Isolde right? Had she accepted Aldrich's fears so easily because part of her still believed she was not worthy of being chosen? Before she could respond, Gareth appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Lady Freya, the king requires your presence. Immediately." Something in his tone made Freya's blood run cold. She followed him through winding corridors to a room she had never entered before. A council chamber filled with maps and battle plans. Aldrich stood at the center, flanked by soldiers. His expression was carved from ice. "There has been a development," he said without preamble. "Lord Corvin Greymont has made his move. He has seized 2 border fortresses and is openly challenging my authority. He is calling for other lords to join him in deposing me." "Why are you telling me this?" Freya asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. "Because Gareth's investigation has uncovered something." Aldrich's jaw tightened. Corvin did not just orchestrate the ambush on the road. He orchestrated everything. The rogues that attacked you in the forest, the assassins at the festival, all of it designed to destabilize my rule by exploiting my connection to you. But that does not make sense. Freya struggled to follow. How could he have known about the mate bond before even you did? He could not. Aldrich moved to the table, spreading out documents covered in cramped writing. But he knew that marking you would create complications. He gambled that any connection between us would be exploitable. And he was right. Gareth stepped forward, pointing to specific passages. We found correspondence in the quarters of a captured assassin. Corvin has been planning this for years. He comes from the Greymont line, which lost the throne 3 generations ago when King Aldric's grandfather unified the territories. He has been building alliances, waiting for the right moment to strike. And I gave him that moment, Freya said hollowly. No. Aldric's voice was sharp. Corvin created that moment. He has been watching me, studying my movements, looking for weaknesses. When he saw my reaction to you at the festival, he knew he had found one. The implications were staggering. Everything that had happened, all the pain and fear and danger, had been orchestrated by a man seeking to reclaim power lost generations ago. There is more, Gareth said quietly. Documents suggest that Lady Seraphine's death 5 years ago was not natural. Corvin's agents poisoned her to weaken the king politically and emotionally. The room went deathly silent. Freya looked at Aldrich and saw murder in his golden eyes. He has been my enemy for years, and I never knew, Aldrich said softly. He killed Seraphine. He tried to kill me, and now he is using you as a weapon against me. So what do we do? Freya asked. We? Aldrich's laugh was bitter. There is no we, Freya. Tomorrow night the bond breaks. You return to your village under heavy guard. And I deal with Corvin as I should have done years ago. You cannot face him alone, Freya protested. He has fortresses, armies, allies. I am the Alpha King. Aldrich's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I have faced worse threats than an ambitious lord with delusions of grandeur. Not while distracted by trying to protect me, Freya shot back. That is what he is counting on. He knows you will be vulnerable while the bond is breaking, while you are in pain from the severing. Aldrich's expression flickered, just for a moment. Then his control reasserted itself. I will manage. Gareth cleared his throat. My king, perhaps Lady Freya has a point. Corvin's timing is strategic. He plans to attack during the full moon, knowing you will be weakened. If Lady Freya were to accompany us, her presence might actually strengthen you through the bond, rather than weaken you. Absolutely not, Aldrich snapped. I will not bring her into a war zone. I am not asking for your permission, Freya said quietly. Aldrich's head snapped toward her, but she continued. You have spent weeks trying to protect me by pushing me away. But Gareth is right. We are stronger together than apart. And if Corvin wants to use me as a weapon against you, perhaps it is time I became a weapon for you instead. You do not know what you are saying. Aldrich growled. I know exactly what I am saying. Freya moved closer, driven by a certainty she had not felt before. I am Silverblood. I have powers that are only now awakening. Malus said I could amplify your abilities, that I could create defensive barriers. Let me help you end this. No. Why? Because you are afraid I will die? Freya's voice rose. We are all going to die eventually, Aldrich. The question is whether we die having fought for something that mattered, or whether we die alone, having never truly lived. The words hung in the air between them. Freya could see the war raging behind Aldrich's eyes, the battle between his instinct to protect and his need to accept help. The moon rises tomorrow night, Freya said softly. Either the bond breaks and we go our separate ways, or we face Corvin together and see what happens when a king and his Silverblood mate stop fighting destiny. And if it kills us? Aldrich asked hoarsely. Then at least we will die together. Freya reached out, her hand covering his. Is that not better than dying alone? For a long moment, Aldrich did not respond. Then slowly his hand turned, his fingers lacing with hers. The bond flared between them, weak but still there, pulsing with shared determination. 3 days, he said finally. We leave at dawn to meet Corvin's forces. If you survive this, Freya Ashling, we will have a very long conversation about your reckless disregard for self-preservation. Only if you survive it too, she replied. Gareth coughed diplomatically. Shall I begin preparations, my king? Aldrich's eyes never left Freya's. Yes. And Gareth? Prepare for battle. Chapter 5. Blood Moon Rising. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Steel rang against steel. Wolves tore at each other in snarling masses, and the air reeked of blood and smoke. Freya crouched behind the remains of a supply wagon, her heart hammering as she watched Aldrich's forces clash with Corvin's rebels. They had marched for 2 days, racing to intercept Corvin's army before it could reach the castle. Tonight was the full moon. Tonight, the temporary bond would dissolve, leaving them both vulnerable at the worst possible moment. Aldrich fought in the thick of battle, his white wolf form towering over others, a force of nature wrapped in fur and fury. Through the weakening bond, Freya could feel his exertion, his pain from a dozen minor wounds, his absolute determination to end Corvin's rebellion. "Lady Freya, you must stay down," Gareth hissed beside her, his sword dripping red. "This is no place for you." "I did not come here to hide," Freya shot back, though fear clawed at her throat. "Where is Corvin?" Gareth's expression darkened. "He has not shown himself. The coward lets his soldiers die while he waits. Then we need to draw him out." Freya's mind raced. "He orchestrated all of this to destabilize Aldrich through me. What if I give him what he wants?" "Absolutely not." Gareth grabbed her arm. "The king would have my head if I allowed you to be used as bait. He does not get a vote." Freya pulled free, her green eyes blazing. "Corvin wants me because he thinks I am Aldrich's weakness. Let us show him what happens when a weakness becomes a weapon." Before Gareth could stop her, Freya stood and ran toward the center of the battlefield. Soldiers on both sides turned to stare as she sprinted past, her ash-brown hair streaming behind her. She felt Aldrich's shock and rage through the bond as he spotted her. "Corvin!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the din of battle. "Corvin Greymont, you wanted the wolfless Omega? Here I am. Come claim your prize." The fighting slowed, then stopped entirely as warriors on both sides processed what was happening. Freya stood alone in a clearing between the armies, breathing hard, waiting. A figure emerged from the rebel lines. Lord Corvin was tall and lean, his dark hair streaked with silver, his face sharp and aristocratic. He looked more like a scholar than a warrior, but his gray eyes held calculated cruelty. "How fascinating," he called out, approaching slowly. "The broken girl who thinks herself brave. Do you know why I orchestrated all of this, little Omega? Why I spent years planning to destroy Aldrich Thornheart? Because your family lost the throne and you want it back," Freya replied, keeping her voice steady. "Because you are a pathetic man, clinging to ancient grievances." Corvin's smile was cold. "Partially correct. But there is more." He stopped 20 feet away, studying her like a specimen. "My great-grandfather was the rightful king. Aldrich's line stole everything from us through violence and manipulation. I simply seek to restore the natural order. By murdering innocent people? By poisoning Lady Seraphine?" Freya felt rage building in her chest. "You are not restoring anything. You are feeding your own ambition." "Seraphine was weak," Corvin said dismissively. "A pawn who outlived her usefulness. Just as you are a pawn, though you seem unaware of it." He gestured around them. "Do you truly believe Aldrich cares for you? You are a temporary inconvenience, a bond that expires tonight when the moon rises. By dawn, he will have forgotten you even existed." The words were meant to wound, but Freya felt only pity for this man who understood nothing of real connection. "You are wrong," she said quietly, "and I will prove it." Aldrich's roar shattered the momentary peace. He emerged from his forces in human form, bloodied and furious, his golden eyes locked on Corvin. "This ends now," Aldrich snarled. "You and me, Corvin. No armies, no pawns. Just us." Corvin's smile widened. "How noble. Very well, my king. Let us settle this as our ancestors should have." They circled each other like predators, the armies watching in tense silence. Freya wanted to run to Aldrich, to stand between him and danger, but she knew this was necessary. Some battles had to be fought alone. The first strike was brutal. Aldrich shifted mid-lunge, his white wolf form slamming into Corvin, who had transformed into a sleek gray beast. They crashed together with devastating force, fangs seeking throats, claws raking flesh. Freya felt every blow Aldrich took through the bond, each wound a spike of shared pain. The bond was fading fast now, the full moon beginning to rise on the horizon, but it was still strong enough that she experienced his agony as her own. Corvin fought with cunning rather than strength, using speed and strategy to compensate for Aldrich's superior size. He landed a vicious bite on Aldrich's shoulder, tearing deep. Aldrich's answering strike shattered several of Corvin's ribs. Through the haze of shared pain, Freya noticed something wrong. Aldrich was slowing, his movements becoming sluggish. It was not just battle fatigue. Something else was affecting him. The wounds, she realized with horror. Corvin's claws and teeth were coated in something. Poison. The same silver vein poison that had nearly killed her. "Aldrich," she screamed. "His weapons are poisoned. You need to end this now." But Aldrich was already struggling, his white fur matted with blood that was too dark, too viscous. Corvin saw his advantage and pressed, driving Aldrich back with brutal efficiency. Freya felt the moment Aldrich's strength began to fail. Through the bond, she experienced his muscles seizing, his vision blurring, his heart stuttering. The poison was taking hold. No, the word was a prayer, a command, a denial of reality. Freya would not watch her mate die. She would not lose him to a coward's poison when they had finally found each other. Something inside her broke open, a dam bursting. Power flooded through her veins, silver and bright and ancient. Her hands began to glow with that same ethereal light she had seen in the forest. Freya ran toward the fighting wolves, heedless of danger. Soldiers shouted warnings, but she did not hear them. All she knew was that Aldrich was dying, and she had the power to stop it. Mylas's warning echoed in her mind. In times of great need, your power will awaken. She threw herself between the combatants just as Corvin lunged for Aldrich's throat. Her hands came up instinctively, and a barrier of pure silver light erupted from her palms. Corvin's wolf form slammed into it and was thrown backward, yelping in shock. Freya knelt beside Aldrich's fallen form, pressing her glowing hands to his wounds. Power poured from her, an endless well of energy she had not known she possessed. She felt the poison burning through him and attacked it with her light, breaking down its molecular structure, purging it from his system. "Impossible," Corvin snarled, shifting back to human form and staring at her in disbelief. "You have no wolf. You should not be able to—" "I am Silverblood," Freya interrupted, her voice ringing with power that was not entirely her own. "And you are a fool for thinking broken meant powerless." She poured everything she had into healing Aldrich, feeling her own strength draining away. The wounds closed. The poison dissipated. His breathing steadied, but the cost was devastating. Freya's vision began to darken at the edges, her body no longer able to sustain the massive energy expenditure. As consciousness began to slip away, Freya felt the bond between her and Aldrich surge one final time. It was not weakening. It was transforming, deepening, becoming something far stronger than the temporary marking had ever been. The full moon crested the horizon, bathing the battlefield in silver light. Freya felt the temporary bond shatter, but instead of emptiness, she felt something new taking its place. Something permanent, something unbreakable. "Aldrich," she whispered, her eyes closing. "Choose me." Then darkness claimed her, and she knew nothing more. When she fell, Aldrich roared with a sound that was neither human nor wolf, but something primal and furious. He shifted back to human form, catching Freya's limp body before she hit the ground. The temporary bond was gone, dissolved by the full moon's light. But in its place was something that burned like a star. She had saved him, given everything to heal him. And in doing so, she had proven what Corvin could never understand, that true strength came not from power hoarded, but from power shared. Aldrich looked up at Corvin with eyes that promised death. "You wanted to see what a bonded king and Silverblood could do," he said softly, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. "Allow me to demonstrate." He laid Freya gently on the ground and stood. Power radiated from him in waves, amplified by what Freya had given him, by the nascent true bond forming between them. Every shifter present felt it, a pressure that made them want to bare their throats in submission. Corvin tried to run. He did not make it 3 steps before Aldrich was on him, moving with speed that should have been impossible. The fight, if it could be called that, lasted seconds. Aldrich's hand closed around Corvin's throat, lifting him off the ground. "You killed Seraphine," Aldrich said quietly. "You tried to kill Freya. You sought to destroy everything I have built. For that, there is only one punishment." Corvin tried to speak, to bargain, but Aldrich's grip tightened. There was a sickening crack, and Corvin went limp. Aldrich dropped the body and returned to Freya, gathering her into his arms. Her breathing was shallow, her heartbeat faint. She had given too much, burned through her reserves to save him. Gareth appeared at his side. "My king, the healers. No healers can help her now," Aldrich said hoarsely. "Only I can. And there is only one way. The royal mating ritual." Chapter 6. The Ritual. Freya drifted in darkness, weightless and cold. She could hear nothing, feel nothing, only an endless void that stretched in all directions. She had used everything to save Aldrich, poured her very essence into healing him, and now there was nothing left. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard a voice calling her name, Aldrich, but the sound was muffled, unreachable. Is this death? She wondered, to simply fade away into nothingness? Then, like a spark in the dark, she felt warmth, a connection forming, thin as spider silk but growing stronger. It pulled at her, anchoring her to something beyond the void. "Come back to me," the voice said, clearer now. "Freya, come back." In the physical world, 2 days had passed since the battle. Aldrich refused to leave Freya's side, sitting vigil as her body lay still and cold in his bedchambers. Malus had examined her and delivered the devastating truth. Freya's life force was nearly extinguished. Without intervention, she would slip away within hours. "There is one option," Malus had said quietly. "The royal mating ritual. It can transfer life force from mate to mate, creating a permanent bond that cannot be broken. But the risk is absolute. If she rejects it, even unconsciously, both of you will die." "Then we die together," Aldrich had replied without hesitation. Now, as the full moon reached its zenith, Aldrich prepared for the ritual. Gareth and Malus stood as witnesses, along with 3 loyal soldiers who had sworn oaths of secrecy. This ceremony was ancient, forbidden to most, and only performed in the most desperate circumstances. Aldrich knelt beside Freya's still form, his hand trembling as he brushed hair from her pale face. She looked fragile, breakable, nothing like the fierce woman who had run into battle to save him. "I should have told you," he whispered. "I should have said that you were not a complication or a burden. You were everything. You are everything." He drew a ceremonial blade, silver etched with runes older than the kingdom itself. The ritual required blood, sacrifice, and an oath that would bind them beyond death. Malus began the incantation in the old tongue, words that resonated with power. Aldrich cut his palm, letting blood drip onto Freya's lips. Then he bit down on the same spot where the temporary mark had been. Deeper this time, creating a permanent claiming bite. Pain lanced through him. Not physical, but spiritual. He was opening himself completely, tearing down every wall, every defense. His life force began to flow into Freya, a golden light that mixed with her silver. "By blood and bite, I bind myself to you," Aldrich spoke the ancient oath. "By moon and star, I offer my life for yours. By soul and heart, I choose you above all others. Freya Ashling, my mate, my queen, my everything. Come back to me." The golden light intensified, pouring into Freya's body. Aldrich felt himself weakening as more and more of his essence transferred to her. If she did not accept it, did not want the bond, his life force would simply dissipate, and they would both die. In the void, Freya felt the warmth intensify. She recognized it now. Aldrich. He was pouring himself into her, offering everything to bring her back. She could feel his love, his desperation, his absolute conviction that she was worth dying for. "Why?" she asked the darkness. "Why would you risk this?" "Because a life without you is not worth living," his voice answered. "Because you taught me that love is not weakness. It is strength. Because you are mine, and I am yours, and that is worth any price." The words wrapped around her like a lifeline. Freya reached for the connection, grasping it with everything she had left. Yes, she thought. Yes, I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. Power exploded through the bond. Freya gasped, her eyes snapping open, her back arching off the bed. Golden and silver light swirled around her and Aldrich, visible to everyone in the room. The marking on her neck blazed with luminescence, no longer fading but permanent, eternal. Aldrich collapsed beside her, exhausted but alive. The bond between them was no longer temporary or fragile. It was absolute, unbreakable, a connection that transcended physical form. Freya turned her head, meeting his golden eyes. I heard you, she whispered. I heard everything. I meant every word. Aldrich's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. I am sorry it took me so long to stop being afraid. The transformation was not complete. As the ritual's power settled, Freya felt something shifting inside her. Her wolf, dormant her entire life, was finally awakening. She gasped as the sensation overwhelmed her. Not pain, but change. Fundamental and irreversible. Let it happen, Aldrich encouraged, his voice steady. I am here. I will not let you fall. Freya's body began to shift. Bones cracked and reformed, not painfully, but naturally, as if they had always meant to take this shape. Silver fur sprouted across her skin, and her senses exploded with information. Scents, sounds, the texture of the furs beneath her. When the transformation completed, Freya stood on 4 legs for the first time in her life. Her wolf form was smaller than Aldrich's but powerful, sleek and silver with patterns of gold threading through her fur. Her eyes remained the same green, but now they glowed with inner light. Beautiful, Aldrich breathed, shifting into his white wolf form beside her. Absolutely perfect. Through the bond, Freya could feel everything he felt. His pride, his love, his relief that she was alive. And more than that, she could sense his wolf, the primal creature that recognized her as mate and equal. Melis stepped forward, her aged face showing rare emotion. The ritual is complete. You are royal mates now, bound by blood and soul. If one dies, the other follows. There is no breaking this bond. Good, Freya and Aldrich said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. The laughter felt like healing, like release after weeks of tension and fear. Freya shifted back to human form, the change coming easily now that she understood how. She found herself suddenly self-conscious, aware that she was naked and that several people were staring. Aldrich immediately wrapped her in furs, pulling her against his chest protectively. Everyone out, he commanded. Now. Gareth herded the witnesses from the room, Melis muttering about young people and propriety. When they were alone, Aldrich cupped Freya's face in his hands. Are you truly all right? He asked. The ritual, the shift. It is overwhelming for first-timers. I am more than all right. Freya smiled, feeling strength flowing through her that she had never possessed. I can feel everything, Aldrich. Your emotions, your location, even your thoughts if I focus. It is extraordinary. That is the royal bond. It is deeper than normal mate bonds, more intense. Aldrich's expression grew serious. What Melis said is true. We are linked permanently now. If I die, you die. I bound you to my fate without asking permission. I gave permission when I saved your life on the battlefield, Freya countered. And you gave it when you performed the ritual. We chose each other, Aldrich. Finally. Completely. He kissed her then, tender and reverent, and Freya felt the bond sing between them. This was what she had been waiting for her entire life. Not just a mate, but understanding, acceptance, partnership. When they finally pulled apart, Aldrich rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said simply. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was too afraid, too convinced that caring for you would destroy us both. You were trying to protect me. Freya's hand covered his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady. But we are stronger together. We proved that. We did. And now we face the consequences. Aldrich's expression grew thoughtful. The kingdom just watched their king perform a royal mating ritual on a battlefield. Political ramifications will be significant. Let them come. Freya felt fierce determination rising in her. I am done hiding, done being invisible. I am your mate and your queen, and anyone who has a problem with that can answer to both of us. Aldrich's smile was pure predatory satisfaction. Have I mentioned that I find you incredibly attractive when you are threatening political opponents? Once or twice through the bond. Freya replied with a grin. They spent the next hours simply being together, talking about everything and nothing. Aldrich told her about the kingdom's history, the alliances that would need to be rebuilt after Corvin's rebellion. Freya talked about her plans for the Silverblood legacy, wanting to find others like her who might be hidden in remote villages, thinking themselves broken. There was so much to do, so many challenges ahead. But for the first time, neither of them faced the future alone. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Aldrich pulled Freya close. We should sleep. Tomorrow we return to the castle and begin dealing with the aftermath. Tomorrow, Freya agreed. But tonight, just hold me. Always, Aldrich promised, the word resonating through their bond with the weight of an oath. Chapter 7. Crown and Claiming. The great hall of the royal castle had never held so many people. Every noble family, every pack alpha, every dignitary who could make the journey had come to witness the formal presentation of the new queen. Freya stood in an antechamber, staring at her reflection and barely recognizing herself. The gown was exquisite, deep silver silk embroidered with golden thread that formed intricate patterns of wolves and flowers. Her ash-brown hair had been braided with strands of gold and silver, and a circlet of white gold rested on her brow. She looked like royalty, but inside she still felt like the broken village girl who had been rejected by everyone she knew. Weeks of recovery and endless counsels had tempered her fear into resolve. She had faced death and chosen life. Now she would face politics with the same courage. You are radiant, Isolde whispered, adjusting Freya's train. Sister, you are about to become queen. How are you not terrified? I am terrified, Freya admitted, but I refuse to show it. Through the bond, she felt Aldrich waiting on the other side of the doors. He sent warmth and reassurance, a wordless reminder that she was not alone. That steadied her more than anything else could. The doors opened, and Freya stepped into the great hall. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Some showed genuine warmth and curiosity. Others showed barely concealed resentment or calculation. Everyone was judging her, measuring her, wondering if the wolfless girl was truly worthy of standing beside their king. Freya lifted her chin and walked forward with grace she did not entirely feel. At the end of the long aisle, Aldrich waited on the dais, magnificent in ceremonial armor and furs. His golden eyes tracked her every movement, and through the bond she felt his pride and love like a physical warmth. When she reached him, Aldrich descended from the throne and took her hand. The gesture was deliberate. He was showing the assembled nobles that he saw her as an equal, not a subordinate. Lords and ladies of the realm, Aldrich's voice carried through the hall with absolute authority. You have been summoned to witness the formal claiming of my mate and your queen, Lady Freya Ashling, born of the Silverblood line, who stood with me in battle and saved my life at the cost of her own. She has proven her worth not through bloodline or politics, but through courage and sacrifice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Freya caught fragments of conversation. Amazement, doubt, and in some cases, hostility. Not everyone was pleased that their king had chosen a mate who had once been wolfless, no matter her revealed heritage. Aldrich continued, his expression hard. Some of you question this union. You wonder if she is truly fit to be queen. Allow me to clarify. Lady Freya is not only fit, she is essential. Her abilities as Silverblood amplify my strength, making our kingdom more secure than it has been in generations. More importantly, she is my true mate, chosen by fate and by my own heart. He turned to Freya, speaking directly to her now, though his words were meant for everyone. Freya Ashling, when I marked you that night in the forest, it was to save your life. I told myself it was temporary, that I would let you go. But even then, I knew the truth. You were mine, and I was yours. And no amount of distance or denial could change that fundamental reality. Freya felt tears prick her eyes but kept them from falling. This was Aldrich's public apology for pushing her away, for trying to protect her by breaking both their hearts. I ask you now, in front of witnesses, what I should have asked weeks ago. Aldrich dropped to one knee, shocking the entire assembly. An Alpha King never knelt. Not even for coronations. Will you accept the royal bond completely? Will you stand beside me as mate and queen, facing whatever challenges come? The hall had gone silent. Everyone waited for Freya's response, and she knew that her answer would define her entire future. If she said no, if she showed any hesitation, the nobles would never respect her. But if she said yes, Freya smiled, feeling the bond between them pulse with shared emotion. I accepted the bond the moment I ran into battle to save you. I accepted it when I poured my life force into healing your wounds. And I accept it now. Before all witnesses, she took his hands, pulling him to his feet. I choose you, Aldrich Thornheart, not because you are king, but because you are my mate, my partner, the other half of my soul. The bond flared between them, visible as a pulse of golden and silver light. Every shifter in the hall felt it, a wave of power that made them instinctively bow their heads in submission. This was what a true royal bond looked like. Not just a political alliance, but a fusion of power that elevated them both. Aldrich kissed her then, deep and possessive, claiming her before gods and witnesses. When they finally parted, Freya was breathless and flushed, but she had never felt more certain of anything. Mylus stepped forward, carrying a crown. It was more delicate than Aldrich's, wrought from white gold and silver, set with moonstones that caught the light. As the ancient woman placed it on Freya's head, she spoke in a voice that carried surprising strength. By ancient right and royal bond, I name Freya Aisling Queen of this realm. May she rule with wisdom, strength, and the courage she has already proven. The assembled nobles knelt as one, acknowledging their new queen. Not all of them were happy about it. Freya could see that clearly. But they recognized power when they felt it, and the bond between her and Aldrich radiated strength that could not be denied. The formal ceremony gave way to celebration. Wine flowed, musicians played, and nobles approached to offer congratulations that ranged from genuine to transparently false. Freya handled each interaction with grace, hyper-aware that she was being tested with every word. Lord Harwick, a portly man with shrewd eyes, cornered her near the wine table. "Your Majesty," he said with a bow that was just short of mocking. "Tell me, what experience do you have in governance? Running a kingdom requires more than simply being the king's mate." "You are quite right," Freya replied smoothly, "which is why I have spent the past week studying law, history, and politics with Gareth and Mylus. I may not have been raised in a noble house, Lord Harwick, but I am a quick learner, and I have something many nobles lack: direct understanding of what life is like for common people. That perspective will inform my decisions." Harwick's expression flickered with surprise, before settling into grudging respect. "Well said, Your Majesty. Perhaps we judged too quickly. Not all interactions were so easily navigated." Lady Verity, a beautiful woman who had clearly hoped to catch Aldrich's attention herself, made several cutting remarks about Freya's humble origins. Each comment was wrapped in false sweetness, designed to wound without being overtly offensive. "How fortunate for you," Lady Verity said with a poisonous smile, "that the king has such generous tastes. Not every man would look twice at a village healer's daughter." Freya felt anger spike through the bond. Aldrich had overheard and was preparing to intervene, but she sent reassurance back to him. She could handle this herself. "You are absolutely correct," Freya replied calmly. "Not every man would see past surface appearances to recognize true value. My mate, however, has the wisdom to understand that strength comes in many forms." She leaned in slightly. "Tell me, Lady Verity, what was it that made the king overlook you? Lack of courage? Lack of intelligence? Or simply lack of that indefinable connection that makes two souls recognize each other?" Lady Verity's face flushed with rage, but she had no response. She swept away in a rustle of silk, leaving Freya victorious but exhausted from the constant social warfare. As the evening wore on, Aldrich found her on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights twinkled in the darkness. Thousands of lives going about their business, unaware of the politics and power plays happening in the castle above. "You handled yourself well in there," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Like you were born to it." "I was terrified the entire time," Freya admitted, leaning back against his solid warmth. Every word felt like walking on broken glass. "Welcome to court politics." Aldrich pressed a kiss to her temple. "But you were magnificent. Did you see Harwick's face when you mentioned understanding common people? He actually looked impressed. And Lady Verity's face when I reminded her that she was not chosen?" Freya laughed. "That might come back to haunt me." "Let it." Aldrich turned her to face him, his expression serious. "You are my queen, Freya. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me. And I will not tolerate it. I can fight my own battles. I know you can. That is one of the many reasons I love you. But you do not have to fight them alone anymore." The bond hummed between them, full of warmth and promise. Freya reached up to touch the permanent marking on her neck, still getting used to the reality of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rule together. We rebuild what Corvin's rebellion damaged. We find other Silverbloods and offer them sanctuary. We make this kingdom into something better than it was." Aldrich's smile was tender. "And we live, Freya. We finally get to just live. Together," she said firmly. "Always together," he agreed. Inside the great hall, the celebration continued. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were still Corvin's allies to deal with, political alliances to mend, and a kingdom to stabilize. But tonight, Freya allowed herself to simply be happy. She had gone from broken outcast to queen, from wolfless to powerful Silverblood, from alone to mated with the most powerful alpha in the realm. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to face together, and that was everything. Chapter 8. Silver Dawn. 6 months had transformed everything. Freya stood at the window of the royal bedchamber, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly, watching the sun rise over mountains that no longer felt foreign. The castle had become home, its corridors familiar, its people slowly warming to the queen who walked among them rather than above them. "Twins," Malus had announced 3 months ago with barely concealed satisfaction. "Royal Silverbloods always carry multiples. Your children will be extraordinary." Through the bond, Freya felt Aldrich stirring behind her. He had been working late into the night again, dealing with the aftermath of Corvin's rebellion. Rooting out conspirators was delicate work, requiring both mercy and strength. "You should be resting." His voice was rough with sleep as he wrapped his arms around her, his hands covering hers on her belly. "I rested plenty. I wanted to watch the sunrise." Freya leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth that still made her heart race. "Besides, they are active this morning. I think they know their father is near." As if in response, one of the twins kicked. Aldrich laughed, the sound rich with wonder. Every time he felt his children move, he looked like a man witnessing magic. "Have you thought more about names?" he asked. "Constantly, but I want to wait until they are born." Freya turned in his arms, studying his face. "You look exhausted. Did you sleep at all?" "A few hours. There was news from the Western Territories. 3 more families have come forward, claiming Silverblood heritage." Aldrich's expression grew thoughtful. "If they are genuine, that brings the total to 15. Your bloodline was not as extinct as everyone believed. The discovery of other Silverbloods had been one of Freya's greatest achievements as queen. She had sent messengers to every remote village, offering sanctuary to any who showed the characteristic signs. Late or absent wolves, healing abilities, the sense of waiting for something undefined. Slowly, they had come. Frightened young women who had spent their lives believing they were broken, only to discover they were rare and precious. "We need to expand the sanctuary wing," Freya said. 15 families is too many for the current space. Already approved. Construction begins next week. Aldrich kissed her forehead. "You have done something remarkable, Freya. You have given hope to people who had none." "We have done it together," she corrected. "Your authority made it possible. My experience made it personal. The partnership between them had proven more powerful than either had imagined. Aldrich's strength and Freya's compassion balanced each other, creating policies that were both just and practical. The kingdom was stabilizing, slowly healing from years of Corvin's subtle sabotage. "Today is the day," Freya said quietly. "We return to my village." The journey had been planned for weeks. Aldrich was conducting a tour of border territories, and Freya had asked to include her birthplace. She needed to face the people who had rejected her, to show them what she had become. More importantly, she needed closure. "Are you certain you want to do this?" Aldrich's concern rippled through the bond. "They hurt you, Freya. Deeply. You owe them nothing. I know. But I need to prove something to myself, that I have truly moved past it." She smiled. "Besides, I am establishing a healing clinic there. The village needs it, and I need to show them that I am not bitter. You are far more forgiving than I would be." Aldrich muttered. "If anyone had treated me the way they treated you, you would have them executed?" Freya teased. At minimum. His expression was dead serious, but she felt his humor through the bond. They prepared for the journey, Freya dressing in practical traveling clothes rather than elaborate gowns. She was 6 months pregnant with royal heirs, but she refused to be confined to the castle like a fragile doll. The pregnancy had awakened even more of her silverblood abilities. She could heal mortal wounds now, sense illness from across a room, and her defensive barriers were strong enough to deflect arrows. The ride to her village took most of the day. Gareth accompanied them with a contingent of guards, though Freya suspected they were more for show than protection. She and Aldrich together were formidable enough to handle most threats. As they crested the final hill, Freya saw her village spread below. It looked smaller than she remembered, the cottages humble compared to the castle's grandeur, but it was still home in a way nothing else could be. The entire village had turned out to greet them, obviously warned of the royal visit. Freya recognized faces from her childhood, people who had whispered about her, pitied her, rejected her. Now they bowed as she passed, their expressions ranging from awe to shame. Elder Mathen stepped forward, the old man's face creased with age and anxiety. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice trembling, "we are honored by your presence. We wish to express our deepest apologies for how we treated you before. We did not understand what you were." Freya dismounted with Aldrich's help, studying the elder who had once declared her cursed in front of the entire village council. "You are right," she said calmly. "You did not understand. But that is not entirely your fault. Silverbloods have been forgotten for generations. You saw a girl without a wolf and assumed she was broken." She gestured to the assembled villagers. "How many others here have been similarly dismissed? How many young women are suffering, thinking themselves failures, when they are simply waiting?" A ripple went through the crowd. Freya saw several young women exchange glances, hope dawning in their eyes. "That is why I am establishing a clinic here," Freya continued, "not just for healing, but for education. My sister Isolde will run it, with support from the crown. Any who show signs of Silverblood heritage will be tested, trained, and given the choice to join the sanctuary if they wish." Isolde stepped forward from the crowd, her face glowing with pride. Her younger sister had discovered minor healing abilities in recent months, proving that their bloodline ran true. She would never be as powerful as Freya, but she had found her purpose. "Thank you," Elder Mathen said quietly. "Your generosity shames us. After how we treated you." "I am not doing this for gratitude," Freya interrupted. "I am doing it because I remember what it felt like to be the broken girl everyone pitied. I will not let others suffer that pain if I can prevent it." She turned to Aldrich, who had been watching her with barely concealed pride. "My mate and I will tour the village now. We wish to meet with families, discuss their needs, and ensure the clinic is properly established." The next hours were exhausting but satisfying. Freya visited her old cottage, now occupied by a young family who treated her with reverence that felt surreal. She walked the paths she had traveled as a child, seeing them with new eyes. Everything was familiar, yet strange, as if she was visiting someone else's past. The most difficult moment came when she visited the spot in the forest where she had been attacked by rogues, where Aldrich had marked her for the first time. The clearing was peaceful now, sunlight filtering through leaves, no evidence of violence remaining. "This is where it began," she told Aldrich softly. "Where my old life ended and the new one started. Do you regret it?" The question was quiet, but she felt his tension through the bond. If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, would you still make the same choices? Freya considered carefully. The pain, the fear, the times she had been certain she would not survive, balanced against the love, the power, the purpose she had found, the children growing inside her, the kingdom she was helping to shape, the mate who stood beside her. "I would not change a single moment," she said finally. "Every terrible thing led me here. Led me to you. How could I regret that?" Aldrich pulled her close, mindful of her pregnant belly. "I spent so long trying to protect you by pushing you away. I was such a fool. You were afraid. We both were." Freya smiled. "But we chose each other anyway. That is what matters." They returned to the village as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. A feast had been prepared in their honor, the entire village gathering to celebrate their queen's homecoming. The atmosphere was tentative at first, people uncertain how to treat the girl they had once dismissed. But as the evening progressed, barriers began to fall. Freya spoke with the villagers, not as a queen, but as one of them, asking about harvests and families and daily concerns. She healed a child's twisted ankle, an old woman's arthritis, a farmer's infected wound. Each act of kindness chipped away at the wall of shame and regret. Late in the night, as the feast wound down, an elderly woman approached Freya. She had been the village healer, the one who had trained Freya in herb lore when she was young. "I owe you an apology," the woman said quietly. "I knew your mother. She told me, before she died, that your family was special, that you would come into your power when you found your mate. I thought it was fever talk, delusion. I should have listened. I should have protected you from the other's cruelty." Freya took the woman's gnarled hands in hers. "You did what you could with the knowledge you had. That is all anyone can do." She smiled. "But now you have a chance to do more. Help Isolde with the clinic. Teach the young ones herb lore. Use your knowledge to build something better." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "I will. Thank you, child. Thank you for being more forgiving than we deserved." As they prepared to leave the next morning, Freya stood with Aldrich at the village edge, looking back at the place that had shaped her. "Closure," she said softly. "I finally have it." "And?" Aldrich asked. "Was it worth the pain of returning?" "Yes, because I realized something important." She turned to face him, the rising sun gilding her hair and the swell of her belly. "I spent so long wanting them to see me, to value me, but their opinions stopped mattering the moment I saw my own worth. I am not the broken girl anymore, Aldrich. I am powerful, loved, and whole, and nothing they say or think can change that." The bond sang with her conviction, with the absolute certainty of someone who had fought for her place in the world and won. "Then let us go home," Aldrich said, helping her mount. "Our children are waiting to be born, and a kingdom awaits its future heirs." They rode away from the village, not fleeing this time, but departing as queen and king. Behind them, the healing clinic stood ready to help others like Freya had been. Ahead, the castle rose against the mountains, a symbol of everything they had built together. Through the bond, Freya felt their unborn children stirring, already strong and vital. She felt Aldrich's unwavering presence, constant as the sun. She felt her own power, no longer dormant but fully realized. Some bonds are forged in fire and blood. Some loves require sacrifice and courage, but once claimed, once freely chosen, they become unbreakable. Destiny had brought them together, but choice kept them there, and that choice was renewed every dawn, every challenge, every moment they stood side by side. The sun rose higher, burning away the last shadows of doubt and fear, and in its light the Alpha King and his silver-blood queen rode toward their future, bound by love and crowned by fate.